have it to say, when we have public comment, just to remind our selves and our attendees that school board meetings are meetings in public, but they are not public meetings. So we, the board takes into consideration comments from the public, and then we'll, allow that to inform decisions, but we don't respond in that moment. So we just, but if there's something that comes to light in public comment that requires some sort of response, then a school board member or the administrator will reach out subsequent to the meeting. So. Okay, any other public comment? Okay, approval of minutes of 8 December 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, reports and updates. The annual report of administrators. Michael.
Passing it on to
Oh,
Julie.
to me. Delegating in action.
Well, actually, the annual report is something that we produce every year that sort of looks at where we've been and where we're going, and it has seen various iterations. And just as Crystal and the administrators sort of thanked me for the work that I do, this work is also work that they put a lot of time in on a regular basis, whether it's at their AT meetings or at our retreats, in terms of keeping ourselves focused on what our goals are and assessing and verifying, are we getting there, and making adjustments when we need to based on that. So the folks that are sitting behind me help me do my job and have sort of play a role in what you're seeing today. So
thank you. Thank you, Julie.
I think it was Susan Allen last year who said when she read the annual report that she knew everything in there. And so I was like, ooh, that's a really tough bar. I'm curious if people at least felt like it was very familiar to them, at least when they read the report, because we've been keeping you informed along the way. And I do want to share that this is a summary, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to just kind of peek behind the hood at what our real strategic plan looks like, because it's much more comprehensive. And if you love a good spreadsheet, you're not going to be able to read any of the text on here, and I think my administrators in the back will be thankful for that, because they just weren't ready for this to go public. But I did want you to realize that for each of these 5 buckets, we have, you can see, close your eyes for a minute because I'm going to scroll. Our measures that we identify that say that we will know we're hitting progress when we've met these measures. And then our target areas are on the left-hand side, and there are 8 of them in this particular tab, which is focus area 1 on MTSS. And then you can see our action steps left to right are the goals we establish for ourselves for each year. Now, one of the things that we're trying to get better at is measuring success. And so we've kind of added some new features this year where we're progress monitoring ourselves, just like we do with our students when we identify action steps and plans, and seeing where we are in relationship to that progress and giving ourselves some numbers. We're not ready to make those numbers public yet, in particular because when we wrote the plan, we didn't have the numbers in mind, and we convoluted some of the action steps with multiple components, and we were like, oh, we'd be nailing it. If we just took this one piece out, we're still working on this one piece. So I think we're learning a lot about how best to write these plans for the next iteration, next time around, and I think it would be something Mike and I have talked about as being a little more public, but we're kind of trying to scale up for that in our own presentations. But I did want you to know there was a lot more to this than what you are seeing. You're just seeing the synopsis of it. So here's our instruction tab. This one has 5 target areas. For curriculum assessment, you can see we actually strike some things out. You may notice that's about calendar, right? We're not afraid to pivot and make adjustments if it looks like the items that we put on the plan aren't the direction we want to keep moving towards, and so we strike it through and kind of rewrite the following steps on what our hopes for those next steps would be. And then, of course, early childhood education, where we are in relationship to that. That has, let's see, 6, 7, that's a big, 7 target areas, and then building shared leadership.
Can you give us an example of what a target area would be, only because I can't see
Yeah,
it
let's
from-
pick one. So target area 1, vision of a graduate, right? So action steps. Just trying to get it so you can see this. It's not easy to share the screen here. Okay. How come I can't do this separate? Can you see that? So target area 1, vision of a graduate, right? Action steps year 1, hold community forums, model on the main BACs, measure what matters campaign, etc. And then you can see that's been accomplished. So we don't have a 2, 3, 4 because we've written it, but now we've created that document. But now in year 2, we need to communicate, celebrate the creation of the vision of our graduates, in shorts featured on our website, begin to create visuals to display in our schools, and then a separate item is to operationalize it. Review the 5-year strategic plan to ensure alignment with the vision of our graduates. So, and then there's more items that fall into play in the curriculum component as it relates to that action step. So that's like a easy one. We did it. Now it's operationalizing it, and that takes place in other spaces. So you'll find it throughout the document in the other spaces.
Okay.
So, and then, you know, that's a nice space where we all get to, we haven't done this one yet, but we met it. So again, we're going to be working on our measuring a little better so we can be communicating more in numbers and percentages about how we're making progress with our goals. And then we'll communicate that with you a little more explicitly and transparently. But again, we're just not ready to go public with this, but I thought it was important to share that we are trying to be very comprehensive, and this is sort of the backdrop behind this particular document, which is a summary statement of where we are in relationship to it. So, okay, so I thought what we could do is just take one item one section at a time and offer pause for any clarifying questions. I don't want to read it to you because hopefully you've had a chance to read it in advance, but I will project it and give you a moment to review it and then pause there for any clarifying questions. So our first bucket is building a district-wide MTSS foundation. And you've certainly heard about us building systems over the past few years. This is probably the space where we have made our most progress, I believe, in terms of all of our items that we are going to present to you here today. And I guess I would say that's because it's also the newest that's sort of been spearheaded and emphasized. I think one of the questions that I might anticipate folks will have, and I'll just guess if I got your question, in the year 2 and beyond, right, ensuring 80% of our students, maybe not, this is it, are meeting grade level expectations. There's probably some questions about, well, where are we now in relationship to that number? And it depends on which grade levels we're talking about, and it depends on which year of student. But we have been gradually moving from the 60% realm into the 70% realm. So we are seeing progress there. So that is movement in the right direction.
Amazing, actually.
Yeah. Are you seeing equal movement across all the schools? Because I know we've had a focus.
We
in
don't see
Tremont
equal
on some of the
movement
math.
across all the schools or grade levels. So there's variance in both spaces. Yeah.
And any thoughts coming out of these discussions about, again, how to get some equity amongst the schools? And
Always, Carrie.
yeah, I'm sure.
Always. And it's what we talk about with our particular principals and their particular resources and how they can best leverage their resources and bring up their students. One of the topics of conversation we had at our last retreat was coherence and the importance of it. And, you know, that vision of our graduate is an aspiration, but then we need to have a coherence leading into that direction. So very clear scope and sequences that align in that direction, supports in place that are responsive so students can get to that space, we are building coherence, and I think that's, you're seeing that in all the spaces. Some schools are further ahead than others when it comes to coherence, but we're getting there.
She answered.
I want to say that I really appreciate this focus because I think, there's so many things that can take up so much of our time as school board members and but whether or not 80% of, whether or not students are meeting grade level expectations is so impactful to every single student for the rest of their lives. And I think it's just very important that we keep our vision trained on that all these other, and I don't mean they're not important, but kind of other distracting things, that's where the rubber really hits the road, is are we teaching our kids leaving our schools with these key academic and life skills?
And I will share that when we say our service promise is to interrupt educational inequity so that every child will be successful one conversation at a time, we mean that. We realize that these are very complicated problems, and the conversation is where we do the problem solving in that space. So yes, we leverage data, but we need minds at the table ready to problem solve, and so that's the deep conversation that we just try to get better at every time. So our second bucket is strengthening tier 1 instruction. That's what everyone's supposed to enjoy and make sure that 80% are at grade level, right, before we start putting the interventions into place. I'll give you a moment to review this, and then I'll just do some clarifiers. UDL stands for Universal Design for Learning. Yep, and Aaron Oliver, I think, was a wonderful guest speaker who kind of queued up what UDL is. All students can access the lesson, right? And they may be in various parts, and they can go deeper with some cross-cutting, concepts or high leverage concepts. I'm mixing up my science and my math right now concepts, but if you design lessons strategically and thoughtfully, every student should be able to access it. It's a very nuanced skill, right, that we're working on. And that is something artificial intelligence is helping our teachers do in a much more expedient fashion. So they're coming to the table with specific questions about how to support students, and they are getting some supports produced for them in real time. So, a good example might be students are having trouble accessing a particular reading, and they can upload the PDF into AI and say, I have a reader who has this challenge, this challenge, and this challenge. How might we support this student? And it might say, let's just pull the key concepts here for now, dig deeper in this aspect, but do some higher analytical thinking with this component. So it still challenges. And the teacher might say, I don't think you don't have it quite right there. I need a little bit more with this component. And there's a conversation happening. Not all of our teachers are leveraging AI now. It is a growing practice in our district, but I will tell you, when it works, it moves quick. And it's moving quicker than you might think. People are seeing the value of being able to actually leverage the tool to employ UDL, which was daunting. And can be daunting for teachers. So we are working on that. We are continuing to work on that, and next year it's a big focus. Okay. All right, bucket 3.
Ask you a question?
Yes.
Really, and it pertains to buckets 2 and 3, which is that, I think it's when you've been either running a school or teaching in a school or doing anything, it's hard in your midstream to be like, I am going to change how I'm doing things and whatever. And essentially through some of this is what we're asking. I mean, this is what needs to happen. Like, I think it's critically important that we have a coherent curriculum across all of our schools, whether or not everyone agrees that that's what, like, I think that's just critical. And I think it's critical that people, you know, if their instructional practice isn't working, then they do something different, right? But do you think, but it's not always easy to get people really motivated. I mean, that's very hard work, right? So do you think that's going well?
I will tell you, I think, I'll just give you a concrete example of a conversation I had not long ago, right? So we are moving to align some folks with a particular scope and sequence, and it's different from what they've been doing, right? And it's using different materials. And they said to me, well, what's wrong with what I'm doing? I think I'm doing high quality work. And they're not wrong. And I've said that to them. You're actually not wrong. You are doing high quality work. The problem is you're doing it by yourself alone, and there's no one else integrating with you seamlessly. So what's the problem with that? So you have students who are in your class who are on someone else's caseload, and they're coming up to you and they're saying, how do I support your student, right? They work with me, we do some pull-out time, I have a plan for them, how can I help? And the interventionist has the same question, how can I help? And it puts these support mechanisms in place in the position of, I was this terrible, but like, you know, I think of Oliver Twist. Can I have some more, please? How can I help your student, please? And it's always whether or not the teacher is going to go, well, I think, you know, it really should be quite different. The interventionist should be coming to the teacher going, I know what's coming up. And this kid needs some pre-teaching here with this particular vocabulary, so I'm going to get on it. They're offering on equal par level and integrating with you in a coherent manner. You're on the same team. It's not, this is my class, how I do things. These are our students. This is how we do things. So it takes a little longer because it's collaborative. And if you're making decisions and you've got a group, you know that it takes longer, right? So that, people don't like that per se because it's not quicker and nimbler sometimes, right? Because it can move a little slower. But in the end, what you're building is a cohesive system where everyone's tapping into it and supporting the students. And we don't spend a lot of time learning everybody's methods, right, which can be too individualized. And you're just taxing the support folks who should be leveraged, and they're working with your most marginalized students. So we're actually trying to empower this group of people so they can integrate into the tier 1, you know, experience, the regular classroom experience. And once that gets cooking, it's really fun. And people who are experiencing that are going, yeah, this works. So I think in response to your question, I'm doing a little long-winded here, she'd never thought of it that way. Yeah. She thought of it as I just wasn't, you know, looking at her particular level of instruction as being of good quality. And it was. The problem was it just wasn't part of a system. And we're trying to build cohesiveness. So that's really the message of MTSS, and people are starting to get that. Let's work together. So I am seeing pockets of success of that, and I feel like we're at a tipping point. So. Any other questions on curriculum assessment foundations? I see no questions. Strengthening early childhood education. I might have to bring in Cora Lynn in here. Put her on the spot, but no, you've been getting regular updates from Cora Lynn, you know, that we're working towards supporting 3- and 4-year-olds, and we've been doing ongoing professional development support with play-based education. We're very tied in with the state, who's also supporting that education. And then lastly, building shared leadership. I'll give you a moment to take a look at that.
Can you remind us what PEPG stands for?
So that's Performance, Evaluation, and Professional Growth Cycle. That's something that we created last year. We had some pretty generic evaluative tools. You have seen the HIT framework, you have seen the professional framework. If you haven't, it's on the website, and we're trying to work on better communication in that regard for school boards. So stay tuned for future presentation there, but we're trying to create a little bit of a one-stop shop so you know who we are, what our story is, what we believe, and all those components in a very, succinct location. So for new members, the HIT framework is our high impact teaching framework. The professional framework is like, come to work on time, be professional, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. High impact teaching is this is what good teaching and learning looks like. And that's where we establish our personal growth goals as professionals, and it's where we get feedback from our administrators. And we rewrote those and updated them 2021 to be more in line with the new research. So, and we haven't really updated them since because we're still quite content with them. We think they represent best practice. The challenge for us was that giving a teacher, this is state law, you have to give them a score on where they are within that particular, domain. And it's like a rubric that, your students might bring home on how you're doing on a paper, right? These are your components. Here's a 1 to 4 rubric. Here's a 4, 3, 2, 1 description. We didn't have the descriptions. So we wrote those and created those so our building principals could give more deliberate feedback as this is what meeting expectations looks like. This is where coaching looks like, so that they could be a little more deliberate in their feedback. So that's new in its employment this year. We created it last year. And we also kind of streamlined how to leverage Schoology to house that stuff. Everybody was sort of working in Drive and, things of that nature. And it was really useful, when we had a change in leadership with Chematech, and we just brought, Carolyn right in there, right? So it was nice to have all the materials in that one space. People's evaluations that were started were not ended. They could continue on. There wasn't this hunt for where's the materials that were left off. So we're working on better ways, again, systems, right? So that will be person proof. We don't want someone to leave and the work to discontinue.
What is the, I'm just looking at the restructuring time to have more building-based work rather than district-led. Is that, can you explain that?
Yeah.
We're moving towards that for what's.
Yeah, I think
what's
to get alignment, we focused a little bit more on district work, right? And it's challenging having all of the different folks in different spaces come and meet. And we were kind of reevaluating. That's really precious time. We want to leverage it the best way possible. So we've kind of thought about how we could restructure our professional development days to get some more district time so we could address the needs of the collective groups in those spaces. And then a growing need, of course, is with MTSS, just like our spreadsheets you just saw, we do those in 18 retreats, the pull-out days, right, that we do 3-4 times a year. Teachers have spreadsheets like that too with their data teams, and they need time, collective time, where they're actually working together and creating action steps for students, right? Theirs look a little different. They got students' name on it, data, and need to make plans. So we were thinking that, it would be a good trade for us to be leveraging, it's all MTSS. The question is, where on MTSS are you leveraging the time, right? So we were thinking it would probably, at this point, since we're kind of building in these cohesive structures, leverage the time to be operationalizing the structures at the building level. So that's the thinking behind it. So it's less time, I believe, so it's more instructional minutes. Back in, this isn't definite, so I'm speaking out of turn. This calendar meeting is tomorrow. This is a proposal, was thinking that, we would gain half a day professional development day at the district level to kind of attend to the needs we needed to have done. And then we would reduce the amount of time of half days, but have them be strategically placed so that the data teams can take place. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I feel like there's one more thing I want to say about it, but I think that's okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Carrie?
I'm just curious, as we see new teachers moving into our district and new administrators as well, is this something that other districts around us are doing, or are people looking at this as something different and exciting, or is it comfortable, like a new teacher coming?
Are you talking about all this? Like what?
Well, like the MTSS.
Everybody's doing this.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing this.
Mhm.
And I would say, it's been on the books, law for 10 years now.
Oh, okay.
So I think the depth of understanding has evolved with school districts over time. And there's been a big learning curve to it.
Yeah.
Because it's really about leveraging data and, believing in data. And, we kind of have a culture that doesn't like testing, and I get it, right? It feels like it's taking away from instruction, and it can feel like, well, why am I doing this? But if you're really taking that information and leveraging it so that I can improve outcomes for you based on what you need, well, now people are shifting a little bit. Well, this is actually useful.
Mhm.
So and also the measures, we have to figure out the right measures, right? So data culture is evolving, and it's because it's actionable and creates results. So I think people are starting to believe it's kind of reinforcing, right? Itself too. Yeah. It's allowing us to be more strategic and precise. We don't need more help of what's not working.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing for a very long time, right? Just keep helping, keep working harder. Well, harder at what, right? Like,
Mhm.
Find the piece that I'm missing to help me get there. And that's what the data does. It helps decode the mystery about why you're not learning. You can learn. We just haven't cracked the code as to what's getting in the way, but the data helps us do that.
I'm curious about this infrastructure and an AOS versus an RSU, and how you envision how it's affected or could be affected as you're planning for the future. Are there things that you're doing now that are more difficult because we are not unified and would be easier, or vice versa? How is it related?
The way I approach my work is I'm pretending we're not an RSU and we're never going to be one. And I want to make sure all of our kids reach the vision of our graduates. So how can I work, creatively and thoughtfully and nimbly to get there? I have to show up to work that way. And we are moving in that direction. If we become an RSU, well, that's great because a lot of things will be lined up. It won't be a shocker at that point because these things are moving in that direction for coherence, right? But then what I would be able to do is leverage the resources more strategically, right, to make sure that it's getting to where it needs to go. So of course it would be better. It would be more nimble and responsive. And I think that's the argument we're trying to make in these community forums.
Thank you.
Other questions? So, thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. That brings us, we have no discussion items, so now we have our first action item is consideration of approval of the fiscal year 27 budget, which is entirely
So I have the budget fact sheet going around one way and the budget going around the other. And this budget is, the same as the one that you saw the last time around. There were no significant changes. I did want to mention, so in going through, a reminder that, we were looking at the assessment going out to towns at being 3.9%, and our budget to budget was 7.25%, and the major driver of that, really was the the need for the new payroll software into our business office. If you were to strip that out of this budget, then our assessment would be at 1.08%, and we'd have a 5.4% budget to budget. So when you look at what we're trying to do and the rest of the budget, we try to be as nimble and as frugal as possible, but recognizing on the business office side that there is that need to upgrade that software to have software that can be upgraded because what we have now has lived its life, but also be able to see some efficiencies in the way that folks are doing, particularly our hourly staff, and how we gather that. You've heard us talk before that we're still using paper timesheets, and that could be very time consuming on the side of the worker and potentially error prone. And then when you have individuals trying to read people's writing, there's some errors that can occur there, and then you have to backtrack, and it takes a while to finalize those numbers. And so there's definitely some efficiencies and better accuracy as we move towards new software to support the business side. And so that's the real main driver of this budget. And then on the back side of your budget fact sheet, you can sort of see how each individual school is doing in terms of its assessment to the AOS. And as a reminder, that that calculation that drives what individual schools play into the AOS assessment, there's that 0.5% of the total budget that everybody pays into at a start. And then there's the three averages that make up your share. And so each school has the average of the total combined budget, the school's percentage of students, and then this percentage of full-time staff. So that drives whether or not the school pays a little bit more or pays a little bit less. It's based on your percentage of the combined budget, your percentage of students, and your percentage of full-time staff. So as those numbers change, your assessment changes. So the high school had a bit of an increase. Bar Harbor had a decrease. Mount Desert, Southwest Harbor, and Tremont, see about a 0.25% increase to, and then Swans Island, very little, 0.8, and then Cranberry, Frenchboro, and Trenton saw, along with Bar Harbor, saw some decreases. And that's made up of those three percentages. So as those things change, your level of commitment to the AOS changes.
Are there questions about the budget?
Make a motion to approve the 26-27 budget at $3,645,620.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, our second action item is renewal of contract and adjustment of salary for superintendent effective 7/1/26. I have it right. Yes.
I make a motion to renew Mike Sabori's contract for the salary of $187,425 effective July 1st, 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Approval to set date and time for annual budget meeting and approve and sign warrant for annual budget meeting. I have language here if someone wants to.
Don't let me step on anyone's toes.
You're on a roll, Susan.
Okay,
I move that that the warrant for the AOS budget meeting for Mount Desert Island Regional School System is hereby approved with a total budget figure of $3,645,620, and that an AOS budget meeting be and is hereby called for January 21st, 2026, for the purpose of voting on the central office budget for the AOS for the 2026-2027 fiscal year.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that brings us to the conclusion of our action items, and I think as things going around that Erin as the secretary must sign.
Everyone has to sign it, but only Aaron can sign the bottom.
Bottom, yeah.
Don't even feel special. Yes, that's right, as secretary.
So everyone signs it, you sign.
As this goes around, is there any other business? Carrie?
I would like to propose that at all AOS meetings, we have a block of text that we read about public comment, and also that we add to our agendas that we are going to approve the agenda, as was pointed out at the Tremont meeting. I felt that was out of line, that we don't approve our agendas. I know we do them at the trustees meeting. I don't know why we don't do them at our other meetings.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like to see that block of text right in the
Yes.
agenda, so it's something that the chair can read at the beginning of every meeting.
Yes, we will do that. Okay. Future agenda items, I have something with the custodians.
Oh, I have, there's 2 MOUs I'd like to bring to the board around our collective bargaining agreement with the support staff. One was the differential pay that we need to work on together. That was part of that negotiations for safety care and other specific needs, and so we have worked and done that and have just some final language, and so that's something that at our next meeting, I'd like to approve that. And then the other piece is there is a recognition in some of the language that needed to be clarified, particularly around the first snow day. And the way it is written is a little confusing. And so I worked with support staff and Amy Walsh and Drummond and Woodson to clarify the language of what staff are supposed to do on those days, because our collective bargaining agreement kind of lumps everybody in that particular section on what happens on the first snow days and whether you have to come into work or not is really what the issue is. And it lumps everybody in. However, custodians and others have things that they have to do. And so it's important to clarify some of that language. And so that MOU is written so that it's more clear. And the association sort of passed their version. So
One future agenda, in the spring, we will be putting together our negotiating team because we're in year 2 of the contract, but to get ahead of the teachers ahead of the budget season, we have to start. So if you think you might be interested in that, be in touch. I mean, it'll come up on the agenda, but just put it here. Any other future agenda items?
Jessica, can we get an update on where we are with the middle school subcommittee?
Yes, we'll put that on the next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
We're having operating rooms difficulty here. We feel like we're signing to the same thing. Were we meant to do that? They
yes,
say
I
the
need
exact
2
same.
copies.
Oh, okay. I just want to double check.
Yes, yeah, you are.
We all have to
Right, so one.
Well, there's 2 copies.
They
We
have
have
to
to
sign
have
it.
Going one way, the other one's
Yeah.
going the other way. They're exactly the same.
They're exactly the same, but they're going, you have
To
to.
make your signature exactly the same.
So make your signature exactly the same.
Who gets to figure out whose signature is whose? That's what I want to
That's
ask.
Nancy's job.
I have a logistical question, because on the 21st, we just set the date for the budget
Yeah,
meeting. What time, did we say what time it is?
6 p.m.
Thank you. Is that in the?
That'll be,
Your auditorium, or here, or we can post it.
we did it here, we did the high schools and we did AOS's in here last year.
So, okay. Anything else? Okay, is there any public comment? Okay, so, the next meeting will be Monday, 12th of January, 2026, regular meeting, and then the annual public budget meeting will be Wednesday, 21st of January, 2026 at 6 p.m. here, unless you're here otherwise.
And there are cupcakes, which is part of our annual meeting. They are for here or to go.
Is there a motion to adjourn and have cupcakes?